Stronger than broken where loss ends, courage begins. Chapter 1. How to rise. The first light in Addis didn't so much rise as loosen its grip from the edges of the hills. Daniel Tesfaye laced his running shoes on the balcony while the city drafted itself away, roosters blotting the silence, a bus coughing to life on the next block, the far-off thread of a church bell. He checked his watch, checked the day's calendar, then checked both again. Habit felt like control. Control felt like safety. He ran a short loop past the woman who sold roasted barley in tiny paper cones, past the kiosk where newspapers hung like flags, past the barber shop where the radio already argued football. A boy kicked a deflated ball against a metal gate and shouted "KOA," as if the ball could be persuaded into air. The boy waved at Daniel. Daniel waved back and kept moving, counting breaths, counting steps, counting the things he owned by effort, wife, daughter, home. A career that had taken him from junior engineer with a rust-stained notebook to project manager with a white hard hat that other people watched. A bat, his daughter Hannah called when he slipped through the door, sweat cooling on his arms. "You promised the poem rehearsal. I'm 8 minutes early," he said, smiling because he was only 2 minutes early. 8 minutes is almost a miracle. Hannah sprang onto the couch, hair drawn into two purposeful puffs. "Listen." She held up her notebook and declared in the sober tone of an 8-year-old who had discovered metaphor. "The river remembers what the stones forget." Daniel leaned against the doorframe and let her words fall into him. His wife, Maya, glanced up from the stove, where a pan hissed. "You hear that? She's going to make us both cry in front of the whole school." "I don't cry," Daniel said. "I perspire from the eyes." Maya laughed and flicked water at him. "Perspire your hands clean and set the table." They ate quickly, furfur bright with Berber, scrambled eggs, coffee that steamed like good news. The radio threaded headlines between songs. The anchor mentioned the rainy season returning soon, and Daniel thought about the poor schedule for tomorrow, the steel forms that had to be fixed, the trucks that must not be delayed. Rain makes concrete tricky. Rain makes everything tricky. "Tonight," Hannah said, drumming her fingers next to her plate, "you sit in the front row." "You said." "I said," Daniel echoed, pressing a palm to his heart. "Front row. The seat with my name on it." Maya watched him with the look that carried a decade of context. "We'll hold you to that seat." He kissed Maya's cheek, kissed Hannah's forehead, grabbed his notebook and hard hat, and stepped back into the city's river. He owned the morning. He believed he owned the day. The project lay like a promise across the gentle cut of the valley where traffic snarled each afternoon, a new overpass that would let the city breathe a little easier. From the side office, you could see the future traced in cranes and scaffolds, and the slow geometry of rebar and formwork. To Daniel, the bridge was a sentence the city wrote, sturdy and forward-looking. He had loved bridges since he was a kid, when his father took him to see the old railway arches and said, "Men built this with their hands and their patience. You build what you respect." He walked the perimeter with his assistant, Lulit, a young engineer whose questions landed like nails exactly where they should. "We're 2 days ahead on the eastern abutment," she said, tapping her clipboard. "But the southern wing wall is tearing a little at the foreign tie." "How much?" Daniel asked. "Hairline. I think the ties were torqued unevenly." Let's see it." They stepped over cords and past welders. They are already metallic with the day's labor. At the southern wing wall, he bent close. She was right, a thin white promise, not a crack yet, but a thing that could dream of becoming one. He pressed a finger to the surface, felt the grain and stubbornness of the pour. "Stop work here," he said. "Ready. Recheck the levels. We'll lose a day," Lulit warned. "We'll lose sleep if we don't," Daniel replied. "I prefer to lose the day." He moved on, the word spreading stop, reset, ready, and watched the crew adjust with competent annoyance. He knew the smell of shortcut. He also knew the price of it. People respected him in part because he said no before no was popular. By 9 o'clock, the client's liaison, a man with a permanent squint named Beckel, arrived in a too-clean vest and asked for progress pictures from the best angles. By 10, a supplier called to say the next delivery would be late. By 11, the accountant messaged that the ready would push them over this week's contingency. Could they just monitor instead? Daniel replied with 3 words, ready.recheck.record. At noon, they stood under a corrugated shade and ate, laughter in pockets, steel dust in every fold of clothing. The crew chief told a joke about a donkey with a driver's license, and even the crane operator laughed. Daniel watched them fondly, felt the private swell of having built not just a bridge but a crew who trusted one another. He slid his phone from his pocket and texted Maya, "Still on for tonight. Front row. No excuses." Maya sent back a single emoji of 2 eyes watching him. Somewhere in that little icon, Daniel heard the whisper of their last argument. "I know your job is important," she'd said, voice not raised but heavy. "But what happens when its importance eats everything else?" He had responded with the optimism that sometimes sounded like defense. "It won't eat everything. I have a system. Systems are not vows," she'd said. Then, softer, "Just show up." He was determined too. Determination, to Daniel, had always been the rope that pulled possibility over the cliff edge. In the afternoon, a light breeze chattered through scaffolds and carried hints of eucalyptus. He and Lula checked the new ties. He pulled out a small notebook where he kept quotes in pencil, a habit picked up when his first boss sent him home for not knowing the difference between keeping records and making them. In the margin of a page filled with material schedules, he had written weeks ago, "Tighten every bolt, but don't believe you are the bolt." It was his way of telling himself to hold things firmly, but not pretend control was the same thing as fate. "Good catch," he told Lula. "If anyone challenges it, blame me." "I already did," she said, grinning. "They said you'd say that." He felt the quiet reward of being known in the right way. By 4, the site hummed with the comfortable conviction of work well done. Daniel fielded a final call from Beckel about moving a site visit for some dignitary. "Another day," Daniel said. "We need to let the adjustments cure." "And the photos?" Beckel asked. "The minister likes to show progress. Show them the readies," Daniel said. "Readies? No one wants to see rope. They like to see the ribbon at the opening." "The rope is how we get there." Beckel sighed, the sigh of a man who has met an obstacle called principle. "Fine, tomorrow." Daniel checked his watch. Time enough to change, to get to the school with margin, to beam embarrassingly from the front row. As he collected his things, a text chimed from the concrete supplier. "Forecast says heavy rain late tonight. We're moving the pour from tomorrow morning to tonight 8 p.m. to beat it. Can you confirm supervision?" Another text followed from the night shift foreman. "We need you present if we pour out new ties." "Your call." Daniel's certainty faltered. He stared at the messages until the words blurred. The readies needed eyes. The poor needed oversight. But Hannah needed a front row seat filled by the man who said he'd be in it. He considered delegating. He considered postponing the pour and risking rain deforming the plan. He considered being into places at once, a trick he had tried many times and pulled off fewer than he'd admit. He dialed the foreman. "We won't pour without me. If we move it to 8, I can get to the site by 9:45. Cover form work until then. No one rushes." "Copy," the foreman said. "We'll be ready." He hung up with the helpless hope of a man arranging dominoes in his head and demanding they fall around his real life. He called Maya. "I'm on my way," he said. "You'll be here," she confirmed, not asking, not pleading, just marking a yes where a yes had been promised. "I'll be here," he repeated. Then, compelled by honesty he wished wasn't necessary, he added, "I might have to slip out after." "After is after," Maya said. "Let's make during what it deserves to be." He exhaled. "During will be right." He changed at home, a clean shirt and the jacket Hannah said made him look like a news person. The 3 of them walked to the school hand in hand, a little triumphant parade down their street, through neighbors' greetings, past a tail of cloud beginning to rake the sky. In the courtyards, parents clustered like islands and teachers shepherded excited kids toward the assembly hall that smelled faintly of chalk and vacuumed carpet. Maya squeezed his hand. "There's the front row. It has my name on it," he said, and indeed, in the middle seats a paper sign read reserve. He found a pen and added, in small letters, "For the person who shows up." Maya smothered a laugh. "You're impossible," she whispered, which in their language, tonight, meant you were trying and I see it. The program began with a welcome music class clapping out a rhythm that almost agreed with itself. Hannah's class came third. When she walked on stage, she scanned the audience and found him. He sat a little taller under the beam of her trust. She read her poem carefully, like she was laying stones across a river so others could cross. The river remembers what the stones forget. It remembers the feet, the laughter, the way we once jumped on the same day each year and shouted hello to the old sycamore. Daniel didn't perspire from the eyes. Not exactly. But the room blurred in a way that felt fluid and unthreatening. Moments lodged in people like seeds. He wondered which one this would become for her, for him. During the applause, he looked sideways and saw Mother to seats over, face turned upward like a plant under rain. He saw the teacher on L rubbing the back of a boy who had stumbled over a line and recovered. He saw Maya watching not just Hannah but the other children, collecting the proof that people grow if you water them with attention. After the poems, there were drums. After the drums, a short speech about community and patience. Daniel kept an eye on the time and the way the sky, through a high window, had darkened into something that carried weight. When Hannah was done and had returned to her seat, he caught her glance and touched his chest. "I was here," then leaned to kiss Maya's temple. "I'll head now," he whispered. "Before it opens up." Maya nodded, inevitable as weather. "Drive slow," she said, her usual benediction. She added, without looking away from the stage, "Be careful with your believing that you can beat the rain." "I'll let it win," he said. "I just need to get to shelter first." He slipped out with a few other parents moving toward night shifts and bus routes, the hallway echoing with soft footsteps and old posters asking for volunteers. He paused by the door to the court, caught a last glimpse of Hannah with her friends, heads together like conspirators planning joy, and felt the sharp urge to ditch responsibility and walk back inside, sit down, let someone else make a call. But the habit of leadership moved him. He stepped into the evening. The wind had teeth now. Plastic banners worried themselves free and snapped. The first drops landed like advice no one wanted. He jogged to the car, lifted his face to the scent that always came before rain, ozone and earth, then slid behind the wheel and started the engine. His phone buzzed. A message from Lulit. "Good job on insisting we ready. Found to misalignments when we rechecked. Saved us trouble later. Go be a dad." A message from the foreman. "We're set. Forms covered. If you're not here by 10, we hold until morning." He typed back, "On my way. Don't pour without me." He paused, then added, "We hold if conditions are wrong." He put the phone face down on the passenger seat and tightened his hands on the wheel, as if the car demanded to be held the way a stubborn fact demanded to be faced. Traffic was thick around the school but thinned as he turned toward the site. Wipers cleared arcs of visibility that filled with drops again. He kept his speed respectful, the radio low, his mind performing those small negotiations that professionals know too well. If I pass here, if I wait there, if I text quickly at the light to confirm the generator is fueled. A red light stalled him at Mescal Square, and he watched water pool and slide along the curb. He thought about his father, about that old phrase, "You build what you respect." He thought about the bridge and the city that would ride over it, and about Hannah's small voice declaring the river's memory. He thought about the responsibility of being the person who says yes or no and believes those words are heavy enough to hold other people less weight. The light changed. He drove. The storm loosened further, sheeted then softened, like someone turning a dial back and forth, undecided about how hard to be. He passed a bus idling with its hazards on and a group of teenagers jogging under a shared umbrella that was failing them all. He almost smiled at the sight, then didn't, because the road ahead narrowed around a construction barrier the city had placed to fix a drain. His phone buzzed again. He glanced down reflexively, a mistake he disliked in other drivers and excused in himself when he planned to do it only for a second. The screen lit the cabin with a small rectangular urgency. Beckel, Minister may visit early next week. Need confirmation. Daniel's hand twitched toward the phone. Then he remembered Maya's drive slow, and the small pencil line in his notebook. Don't he believe you are the bolt? And he pulled his hand back to the wheel. Then he remembered Maya's drive slow, and the small pencil line in his notebook. Don't he believe you are the bolt? And he pulled his hand back to the wheel. The road bent. Lightning stitched the sky to the hill. He thought of the forms wrapped against the rain, waiting as if the future had drawn a sheet over its face and asked for quiet. It is possible to feel, in the middle of a moment, that you are leaving something behind you forever. It is also possible to misjudge which moment is the one that divides before from after. Daniel drove into the curve believing he was simply moving from one responsibility to the next, a man crossing a bridge he had been building all his life. He hummed Hannah's poem, the line about the river and the stones. He turned on the defroster. He checked the mirror. Behind him, the storm rearranged itself. Ahead, the sight lights rose like small moons between cranes. He did not know yet that he stood on the last high step before the slope. He only knew this. Everything he had because he tightened bolts and showed up. And tonight, he was doing both. He pressed his foot, gentle, as if asking the car for the favor of time. The road answered with a slick whisper. Somewhere, a dog barked at thunder and fell silent. Daniel cleared his throat and spoke to no one, a prayer disguised as a promise. Let this be enough, he said. The first hard wave of rain arrived in a single breath, and the night began to test what a man could hold. Chapter 2 of the tragedy. The rain did not fall in drops anymore. It fell as if the sky had leaned down and tipped the basin over the city. Wipers swung in frantic rhythm, struggling against sheets of water that blurred everything into a single gray canvas. Daniel leaned forward, gripping the wheel with the quiet desperation of someone who believed precision could bargain with chaos. The road narrowed again, climbing toward the ridge where the construction site waited like an unfinished sentence. He told himself the readies had been worth it. He told himself the poor could still be controlled. He told himself he would be home by midnight, that Hannah would wake to find him at breakfast, that Maya would shake her head at his stubborn loyalty but forgive him. He told himself all of this because men who build bridges believe in spans that distance can always be crossed if you put enough steel under it. Lightning fractured the night. And for a second the whole valley glowed white, scaffolding etched like bones against the sky. In that flash, Daniel saw the water rushing down the hill ahead, saw it seething over the road, carrying gravel, branches, the bright reflection of a streetlight in pieces. He eased his foot toward the brake. The tires hissed. The steering wheel tugged left. The car slid. Not violently, but with the calm insistence of something that no longer accepted his opinion. Not now, he whispered, as if the storm might hear him. He tapped the brake again, tried to correct. The rear fishtailed, kissed the barrier, snapped him back into the lane. His heart banged against his ribs. For one breath he thought he had it. Then the truck appeared. Its headlights punched through the downpour, high and wide, a beast of steel coming down the opposite lane too fast, trying to hold its own fight against water. The truck swerved, overcorrected. Daniel yanked his wheel right, desperate to thread the space between barrier and mass. The world fractured into noise, metal tearing, glass shattering, the airbag's brutal embrace. Time skipped, gravity folded. He was aware of spinning, of being unmoored, of his notebook flying open beside him, pencil scratching one last jagged line as it tore across a page. When sound returned, it was rain on twisted metal. When sight returned, it was sideways. The car had rolled, landed against the barrier. Driver's side crumpled. The horn wailed, muffled, like a child left too long in the cold. Daniel tried to move. Pain lit every nerve. He tasted iron, felt heat pooling in his chest. His hand groped for the seatbelt release, found it pressed, but the belt clung as if it wanted to keep him in place for judgment. He thought of Maya, waiting in the assembly hall's crowded exit, glancing at her phone for the message he had not sent. He thought of Hannah. Voice small but sure on stage, the river remembers what the stones forget. He thought of the bridge, of bolts tightened, of work half done, of a future leaning into him like an accusation. He whispered again, but softer this time, like someone giving instructions to the dark. "Let this not be the end." Headlights swarmed in the rain. Doors slammed. Voices shouted, "Men, urgent." Pulling at twisted handles. Hands reached in, cutting, tugging. The horn died, replaced by sirens in the distance, swelling toward him like some red, merciless tide. The last thing Daniel heard clearly before consciousness dropped was a voice close to his ear, a stranger's promise spoken in the storm: "Stay with us. You're not finished yet." And then the world went black. Chapter 3: The darkness. When Daniel opened his eyes, the world was muted. Light came in pale rectangles through blinds. The beeping of machines stitched a rhythm he could not claim. His body was a map of pain, each movement a reminder that the river, the truck, the rain, had not negotiated. He tried to speak. A dry rasp left him, and he realized words had been borrowed by someone else. A nurse noticed and came closer, clipboard in hand, soft shoes squeaking against the polished floor. "You're awake," she said. Her voice was the kind that gave facts, not hope. "You were in an accident. You've been here 3 days." Daniel's mind raced. 3 days. How many decisions, how many responsibilities had flown past while he slept or screamed or died? He tried to sit. Pain licked along ribs, shoulder, leg. The nurse pressed gently. "Not yet," she said. "You need to breathe first. Breathe." He did. He tried to remember where he was, what had been before this hospital room. He remembered the storm, the truck, the skid, the crash. And then fear as large as the sky. He thought of Hannah and Maya. He asked first about Hannah. The nurse's lips tightened. "Your daughter. She's fine. Your wife, she's been informed." Daniel's chest constricted, not with relief but with the taste of guilt. He had survived. But what had survived with him? Days passed in fragments, the sterile white ceiling, the low murmur of other patients, the smell of antiseptic, the clicks and bleeps that counted the seconds more accurately than any clock. Visitors came, Maya first, carrying herself like a pillar built from grief and love. She did not scold, she did not cry, at least not in front of him. She only sat, hand in his, letting her presence fill the spaces where words could not reach. "I thought," she began once. Then stopped. Daniel nodded. They did not need more. Then came the news. The bridge project was on hold. The readies he had fought for, the oversight he had demanded, saved the forms. Yes, but the poor would have to wait. Costs ballooned. The contractors blamed each other. The city asked questions that had no answers. And Daniel could do nothing from a hospital bed except endure the weight of responsibility like a stone pressed to his chest. But it was not the work that cut deepest. Hannah's small face at school, the poems she had read, the front row seat he had promised he would miss them all. The life he had built, the rhythm of days, the certainty of presence, had been ripped away in the blink of lightning. He felt the darkness settle inside him, heavier than any body cast or split. The world had not only taken his mobility, it had taken control, purpose, identity. Daniel, who had once measured life in precision and reliability, found himself adrift in a body that no longer obeyed, in a world that no longer paused for him. At night, he lay awake in the shadows, counting breaths as if counting might stitch him back into the world. He thought of mistakes, small ones, trivial ones, the kind that now seemed cosmic. What if he had left earlier? What if he had ignored the poor? What if he had listened to Maya and stayed at the school? Guilt became a pulse in his veins, a rhythm he could not escape. Sleep sometimes came, but dreams were cruel. He saw the truck, the rain, Hannah's eyes scanning the crowd, and himself frozen, unable to move, unable to reach, even when awake. He felt the world had stopped spinning in a way that welcomed him. Friends visited, faces softened with worry, words fumbling, laughter awkwardly placed. They spoke of recovery, of patience, of faith. Daniel nodded. But the nod felt like an echo, not an affirmation. One evening, when the hospital lights dimmed and only the machines remained as witnesses, he asked the empty room, "What now?" No answer came. And yet, somewhere beyond the pain, beyond guilt, beyond the storm, a single truth persisted. He had survived. Something in him, though battered, refused annihilation. Survival was the first quiet spark, even if he did not yet know what to do with it. Weeks passed. Physical therapy became a ritual of small victories. A finger moved, an arm lifted, a step taken. Each movement was agony, each movement a promise. Daniel began to notice the patience of his body, its grudging cooperation. And in that begrudgingness, he glimpsed the first flicker of strength. But the darkness did not fade. It lingered like a shadow in corners, in mirrors, in the moments before sleep. His reflection startled him. The man who once owned mornings, commanded sights, juggled responsibilities, was gone. He was a shadow in hospital gowns and bandages. A man learning to breathe again through pain. And these days, Daniel wrestled with anger and despair. He wanted to blame the storm, the truck, fate itself. He wanted to scream at life for being unfair. But every attempt to surrender ended with the same persistent whisper, "You are still here." This whisper, faint as it was, became the companion he did not ask for but could not reject. And in the darkness, Daniel began to understand something terrifying yet essential. Strength was not the same as invincibility. Courage was not the same as control. Growth would demand more than he had imagined. It was in this crucible, the hospital room, the pain, the silence, that the foundations of his second chance began. Invisible to the world but unmistakable to him. Chapter 4. At the spark, Daniel had learned the rhythm of the hospital, the squeak of nurses' shoes, the beep of monitors, the hiss of the oxygen line. But one morning, a new rhythm arrived, a rhythm that belonged not to illness, but to possibility. It began with a knock on the door. He had grown accustomed to knocks, announcements of routine checks, medication, or visitors whose faces blurred into the background. But this knock carried something else. "Mr. Tesfaye." The voice was firm, measured, yet held a weight of respect. The man in a sharply pressed suit stepped inside, carrying a folder that seemed to radiate purpose. His eyes met Daniel's, and Daniel felt an unusual steadiness in the gaze. "I am Solomon Alamu," the man said. "I work with the City Infrastructure Board. I heard about your accident. I also know what you can do." Daniel tried to speak but only croaked a rasp. Solomon nodded, waiting patiently. "I understand you are recovering," he continued. "But there's a Project 10 emergency repair on one of the city's main bridges. The council needs someone who knows how to handle both people and steel. They need someone who can act decisively. They asked me to find you, to see if you might be willing to consult." Daniel stared. The words hit like sun on ice. The world was still fragile, still painful, still uncertain, but here it was, a thread. Not a rope, not a bridge yet, but a thread. He began, unsure if his voice could betray confidence or merely fragility. "Take your time," Solomon said. "There is no pressure. Just know that you are wanted, needed, and that your skills, your experience, cannot be replaced." Later that day, after the visitor had left, Daniel lay in his hospital bed thinking. The thread pulsed in his mind like a heartbeat, an opportunity, an invitation, a spark. It was dangerous. He was fragile. His body ached in places he had forgotten existed. Yet the spark also sang to something deeper, a reminder of who he had been, of the life he had built, of the bridge between despair and possibility that only courage could construct. Maya noticed the change first. She saw the way his eyes lingered on his notebook again, not for schedules or checklists, but for notes about structural diagrams he had sketched years ago. She saw the shift in his posture, the slight rise of his shoulders as if he were remembering something vital. "Solomon Alamu visited," she said quietly, not wanting to disturb the fragile balance. Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes," he whispered. "There's a project, something I can do." Maya's eyes searched his face. "Do you want to?" "I think," he said carefully, "I need to. Not just for work, but for me. I can't stay here, doing nothing. I have to try." The first steps were small. He spoke with the physiotherapist, negotiating exercises that would gradually allow him to stand longer, walk farther, move with balance and strength. He reviewed blueprints from the hospital bed, traced lines with a finger, imagined how he would correct errors in the field. Each day, the spark grew. a sense of agency returning, a sense of purpose knitting itself into the marrow of his bones. Then came the first real test. Solomon called again. This time with specifics: a bridge at risk of collapse if emergency repairs were delayed. Daniel's team would need a leader who could coordinate engineers, laborers, and suppliers all in the chaos of weather, politics, and human unpredictability. The offer was a lifeline. Daniel hesitated, thinking of the hospital room, aching limbs, the shadows that still lingered. And then he thought of Hannah's poem, "The river remembers what the stones forget." He realized that life, like a river, does not wait for perfect moments. It offers second chances in the debris, in the storms, in the accidents. He picked up the phone. He spoke with Solomon. Voice low but firm: "I will do it. I will try." That decision, small, simple, human, was the spark that lit the first fire of Daniel's return. From that moment, hope became tangible. Each day, each step in therapy, each conversation with Maya and the project team built momentum. One morning, he stood in front of a mirror, steady on to feet for the first time in weeks. His reflection was a man scarred, slowed, but not broken. He raised his hands, flexed fingers that had trembled. "This is where it begins," he whispered. And indeed, it was. The spark had become a flicker, and the flicker, if tended with courage, patience, and persistence, would soon blaze into the fight for his second chance. Chapter 5: The Struggle Back. Daniel returned to the site not as the man who once commanded it with effortless confidence, but as a man who had been tempered by loss and forged in the quiet agony of recovery. The bridge waited for him like a patient, its steel skeleton stretching across the river, indifferent to storms or accidents, demanding only respect and attention. The first day was the hardest. Every step hurt, every command felt borrowed. Laborers glanced at him with polite concern, and engineers hesitated before offering reports. Daniel had to relearn what it meant to lead from weakness rather than strength, to inspire confidence even when he doubted himself. The weather challenged him as much as his body did. Rain fell in intermittent sheets, puddles forming into shallow rivers across the site. He bent over plans, tracing lines with a pencil, listening to Lulit report progress. She had grown in confidence during his absence. And Daniel realized that leadership was also about trust in others to carry forward when you cannot. "You're too hard on yourself," she said during a brief lull, glancing at the way he inspected each beam, each tile, with obsessive care. "I'm not hard on myself," Daniel said. "I'm making sure nothing else fails." "You already failed once," she replied quietly. "And yet you're still here. That's more than most can say." Her words struck him. He had spent weeks trapped between guilt and grief, reliving the accident in infinite slow motion. But here she was, reminding him that survival itself demanded courage, and courage demanded action. The first week, the bridge project moved at a crawl. Daniel spent hours on his crutches, inspecting every formwork, checking rebar alignment, recalculating loads. He coordinated deliveries, managed teams, and wrestled with bureaucratic delays. Each day ended with exhaustion that seeped into his bones. Pain was a constant companion, whispering, "You are not whole yet." One night, after everyone had left, he stood at the edge of the river. The lights of the city blurred in the rain, and felt the weight of the journey. He remembered the storm, the truck, the hospital, Hannah's front row seat, Maya's unwavering faith. He realized that each of these fragments, loss, love, responsibility, formed a mosaic of life he could rebuild if he allowed himself to try. Then came setbacks. The supplier delivered steel that was warped. A worker misread a measurement and had to redo a section. Daniel himself miscalculated a reinforcement sequence, an error that could have compromised safety. Each mistake, each failure, felt magnified by the accident, each echoing his own vulnerability. He wanted to give up, to retreat to hospital beds and quiet rooms. He wanted to believe the darkness still had a hold. But every time doubt crept in, he reminded himself of the spark, the opportunity that had called him back from despair. He reminded himself of Hannah's poem, "The river remembers what the stones forget." He would not forget. He could not forget. Slowly, painfully, Daniel began to rebuild more than just the bridge. He rebuilt himself. He worked with therapists to regain strength and balance, learning to walk steadily, then climb scaffolds, then coordinate heavy machinery without fear. He relearned patience, humility, and the quiet power of listening before commanding. One evening, as the sun sank behind clouds heavy with rain, Daniel watched the first major section of the bridge being poured. He felt the tremor of satisfaction that came from doing right, from acting despite fear, from being fully present in each moment. His hands ached, his back protested. His chest still carried the memory of broken bones, but his spirit felt, for the first time in months, intact. He realized something vital. Struggle was not a sign of weakness, it was the pathway to strength. Every obstacle, every setback, every moment of doubt was a stone in the foundation of his second chance. When Daniel returned home that night, muddy and soaked, Maya greeted him at the door with a quiet smile. Hannah ran to him, wrapping her small arms around his legs. "You're back," she said simply. "Yes," he whispered. "I'm back." And for the first time since the tragedy, he believed it not just in words, but in the marrow of his bones. The struggle was far from over. The bridge was still incomplete, his body still fragile, and the shadows of guilt and loss still lingered. But Daniel understood now that the fight itself, the act of moving forward despite fear, was what made him stronger. Strength, courage, and resilience were not gifts, they were earned, step by step, decision by decision, day by day, and Daniel Tesfaye was ready to earn them, every single day. Chapter 6, The Transformation. Months passed. The rains came and went. The city shifted with its usual pulse, and the bridge, Daniel's bridge, grew steadily across the river, with every beam secured, every rebar tied, every formwork poured. Daniel felt pieces of himself returning from the shadow. He no longer moved as a man fragile and cautious. He moved with deliberate care, yes, but also with quiet confidence. The accident, the hospital, the darkness, they had tempered him, but they had not broken him. His body was not what it had been, but it could carry him forward, step by step, day by day. The bridge's opening day arrived like a promise kept. City officials, engineers, laborers, and community members gathered. The river below shimmered with reflections of dawn, and the steel trusses gleamed under the soft sunlight. Daniel stood on the bridge, feeling its hum beneath his feet, its strength intertwined with every careful calculation, every cautious decision, every ounce of effort he had poured into it. Hannah ran up beside him, clutching a small notebook. "Daddy," she said, "look, I wrote a poem about the bridge." She read aloud. "The river keeps the memory of hands that built, of hearts that dared. Through storms, through dark, through pain, a bridge rises where hope is shared." Daniel's eyes moistened. He swallowed, nodding. "It remembers," he whispered. "It remembers everything." Maya approached, squeezing his hand. "Look at what you've done," she said. "Not just the bridge, but you. You've rebuilt more than steel, you've rebuilt life." He smiled, the kind of smile born from hard-won triumph, tempered by humility. Daniel realized that transformation was not a single moment. It was the culmination of struggle, courage, resilience, and unwavering persistence. Every day of darkness, every failure, every fear faced, had been a step toward this moment. He addressed the gathered crowd, not with the arrogance of a man who had always succeeded, but with the sincerity of someone who had known loss, pain, and despair. Life, like a river, tests us, it challenges us, breaks us, carries us towards storms we cannot predict. But the same river also gives us chances, second chances, third chances to rise, to rebuild, to transform. This bridge is more than steel. It is a symbol of endurance, of hope, and of the courage to begin again when everything seems lost. Applause rippled across the crowd, but Daniel hardly noticed. His eyes were on Hannah, who stood beside him, and Maya, whose quiet strength had guided him back to himself. He saw the laborers and engineers, faces tired but proud. He saw the city waking behind the ribbon of the bridge, and he understood. This moment was proof that brokenness was never the end, it was the soil where second chances grew. Later, Daniel walked across the bridge alone, listening to the river's current below. He remembered the crash, the hospital, the nights of despair. He touched the railing, feeling the steel Feeling the permanence of something built with care and courage, he whispered to the river, to the city, to himself, I am here, I am whole, I will keep moving forward. And as the sun rose higher, catching every rivet and beam, Daniel knew that the man who had once lost everything had become someone stronger, not in spite of tragedy, but because of it. Strength was no longer measured in control or certainty, but in resilience. Courage was no longer absence of fear, but persistence in the face of it. And growth, real, lasting growth, was born from second chances embraced with open hands and a willing heart. Daniel Tesfaye turned from the river, from the bridge, and faced the city. The future awaited, uncertain and vast, but he no longer feared it. He had learned to walk through storms, to rise after falls, and to transform every challenge into a chance to rebuild not just structures, but life itself. Chapter 7: The Legacy. The bridge became more than a structure of steel and concrete. It became a symbol, a testament to resilience, and a beacon of hope for the city. Every day, people crossed it with no thought of the labor, planning, and struggle it took to create. But Daniel knew, and those who had worked alongside him knew. After the opening ceremony, Daniel began visiting schools, engineering colleges, and community centers. He told his story not in dramatic, polished speeches, but honestly, plainly, with the raw truth of someone who had lost everything and built life again from the pieces. To build bridges, he said to a group of young students one morning, you need knowledge, yes. Skill, yes. But more importantly, you need courage. Courage to face failure. Courage to stand up when life knocks you down. Courage to begin again. The students listened, rapt. Many had never considered that engineering could teach lessons about life, about grit, about persistence. Daniel's words left marks deeper than formulas or diagrams. He also started mentoring young engineers. Lilith became his right hand, now confident not only in technical skills but in leadership. Together, they guided teams, inspired workers, and showed that strength came not from controlling everything, but from nurturing people, trusting them, and giving them room to grow. Daniel found joy in small victories, the spark in a student's eye when they solved a problem, the pride in a worker's posture after completing a difficult task. The poems Hannah wrote about rivers and bridges carrying his lessons in their innocent truth. He visited hospitals, too, quietly supporting those recovering from accidents, sharing with them the truth he had lived. Survival is not the end. Pain and brokenness are temporary if one holds on to hope and takes the steps, sometimes tiny, sometimes monumental, toward recovery. One afternoon, standing on the completed bridge, watching the sun dip behind the city, Daniel reflected on the journey. He had fallen, yes, lost everything, faced darkness that seemed endless, but the spark, the opportunity he had taken, the courage he had summoned had led to transformation. And now, he could see the ripple effect of his choices: young engineers inspired, a family reunited, a city's trust restored. Maya stood beside him, hand in his. Hannah held their other hand, notebook clutched against her chest. They had all been tested by tragedy, but together they had endured. Together, they had grown strong. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more.